Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into the 4-3 show. It is early Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. I'm your host, Ryan Blank. I'm alongside Pat Fortuna, Parker Dunn, and Dominic Stern. Gentlemen, how are we doing on this fine Tuesday morning?
I had a rough Monday night, and then I had an 8 a.m. this morning, so it's been a long past 24 hours, but I'm here. I'm ready to talk about some sports, and then we got softball playoffs tonight, baby.
Yeah, my champion pick did not live up to their end of the bargain. I thought I was going to go pick the winners of the men's and women's tournament after getting Stanford, but that was not the case. Baylor played extremely well. Obviously, we'll get into that.
I can't complain. It's a little early, but this is exactly what I asked for, so I'm happy with it. I did ask for a change in time this week, and I can't complain. Watched a good movie last night that Ryan's never going to get the chance to see, so.
I love how it's still like
I love how it's the first thing he mentions. He doesn't even say,
Oh, I mentioned I was in a good
hello,
mood, and the movie was good.
what's up, how are you? Nothing. He just goes right at me.
Well,
Pat, you are a salty man. You are a salty
covered in it.
All right, guys, let's get into it. Let's recap last night. The Baylor Bears are the national champions. What do we think? Dom, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Well, it was just a dominant performance by Baylor, and they were able to control the game from the get-go, obviously jumping off to that big lead, and then Gonzaga just never really cut it down. Like the Baylor's up by 9 through the first 4 minutes, and it never got any closer than that. And you got to give a lot of credit to Baylor because they didn't let Gonzaga do what they wanted to do on the offensive end of the floor. Normally they kick the ball into Timmy, and then Timmy can kind of facilitate, but the guard presence of Baylor wasn't letting the ball get into the paint. And when the passes did go into Timmy, they just swarmed him, and they made him make a decision. And oftentimes it was too fast for him. And a player who had really dominated this tournament up to this point had a really rough game. It was tough to watch because Gonzaga was a truly great team. And for them to come out and just get pummeled like this, that the haters were alive and well last night. And we can talk about it a little bit, but a lot of it was overreacting. And I just feel bad for Gonzaga, but congrats to Baylor.
Parker.
Yeah, that was a game where I think Baylor played the best basketball that they could have throughout the season right there. Because there was some issues later on in the season with their defense. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, this was an extremely well-balanced team, and they still finished as one, but the defense significantly slept a little bit near the end of the season, near conference tournament play. But eventually, once they got to the tournament, they had a close one, sort of with Villanova, and after that game, they really cleaned up some things. The defense started to lock in, and we especially saw it on display in that game. They made issues down low for Timmy. They switched really well, and they just hound the ball. The perimeter defense was extremely good, and that heavily contributed to Gonzaga not making many threes. Ultimately, they did get some open looks, and they weren't hitting them. That's not like Gonzaga. But Baylor, on the other hand, was cashing in on those. It was very lopsided in that sense. They forced a lot of turnovers, and they shot so much better than Gonzaga. So it was a very one-sided affair. They got off to a hot start and really didn't look back. I expected more out of Gonzaga. I thought they were going to make it a closer game, but they really didn't. And props to Baylor for playing so dominantly. I had them getting to that game. I didn't have them winning, but I wasn't shocked that much because they are an extremely talented team. They only had 2 losses in a very competitive conference for a reason.
Pat, over to you.
Yeah, this game annoys me just a little bit because all season, my team was the Baylor Bears. And then, Dom, I put a little bit of blame on you. However, I can only blame myself because I did jump ship on them going into the tournament. I had them getting eliminated pretty they didn't make it too far in my bracket. And I jumped ship on them. I didn't trust them, which I should have done. Go Bears, baby. But I ended up picking Illinois to win my tournament. And I just thought it was infeasible to have 2 1 seeds in the final. So by way of virtue, I had Texas making the final too. So I just had a horrendous March Madness. And to cap it off, the team that I wanted to pick from the very beginning I ended up jumping ship on. I was going to pick Baylor to win it last year too. March Madness got canceled. So I feel bad for jumping ship on Baylor, but at the same time, way to prove me wrong, boys.
I'm sad we didn't get a Gurr in there.
Nah.
But yeah, to speak on what Pat just said, I was amongst the crowd at points through the season. I have proof because I have my college basketball rankings that I did every single week. There's a 3-week stretch where I had Baylor as the number one team, and then they lost, and I kept them in front of Michigan, which I don't think a lot of people did. And then Michigan, of course, lost. I still kept them in front of Illinois. The COVID pause had a lot to do with it. Their defense stunk when they came back from COVID pause, and I was concerned that with only just a week of practice, heading into the tournament, having to quarantine in Indianapolis, that it wouldn't do well for them. But I was wrong. There's no other way around it. I was wrong, and they dominated. Now, I, like Pat, didn't have them going to the Final Four, and I'm losing to Arkansas, and that game was close. I mean, Arkansas had it to within 4 with 5 minutes remaining. They didn't get it done. It happens. But Baylor, congrats to them. Complete program rebuild from Scott Drew. He deserves all the credit in the world. Did a great job building this team.
Yeah, you got to give Scott Drew a ton of credit. What he said in 2003 was he was going to come in, win championships, and win games, and that's exactly what he did. He finally gets his championship, and you got to respect what he's done. But I want to say this as a KU fan. KU beat them. Just want to put that out there. They might not have had a very nice showing in the tournament, but they did beat Baylor. Just had to put that out there. But overall, they dominated this game. They got out to an early 9-0 lead, and Zaga just couldn't come back. They played a fine half after that, kept it within striking distance, holding it to a 10-point deficit at half, and then Baylor just took off, continued to shoot lights out in the second half. I think the other thing they have to look at is the offensive rebounds. Mark Vidal of Baylor had 8 offensive rebounds by himself, and those second chance points really helped Baylor. And then Gonzaga struggled shooting, especially from the free throw line. So those things just went against them. But congrats to Baylor. They played the best game of their season at the perfect time, and congrats to them. Now, let's get into some coaching news. Legendary head coach Roy Williams has retired from North Carolina. Before we get into his replacement, what are your guys' reactions to Roy Williams' retirement?
It felt like it was going to happen eventually, especially how things went last year and how, I don't want to say it was a crap show, but like there was a lot of like blaming the players and whatnot. And Roy Williams, very storied coach, very successful coach, not taking anything away from him, but it kind of felt like he lost his touch last year. And last year, his team had a ton of talent on it. Now, how you want to talk about the talent and the roster buildup compared to other teams and how it's not built for college teams, different conversation. They underperformed last year, and he didn't necessarily take a lot of the blame for it. So he kind of felt like he kind of lost that touch. And this year, the team underperformed again and got bounced in the first round against a Wisconsin team that was very iffy during the regular season. So it just kind of felt like he was on his way out.
Parker.
Yeah, Wisconsin, just going back to that tournament game, they were dominated in that game. This was a season where UNC definitely didn't live up to any sort of hype. I mean, there definitely wasn't as much as there typically is with this team, especially because of last season. But this was a team that just didn't get it done ultimately in the ACC. But when you look at the storied coaching career of Roy Williams, he's accomplished so much. He's won 3 national championships. He's done a lot with Kansas and even more with UNC. There's a lot of history to him and what he's been able to accomplish at the collegiate level. So he's definitely one of the best coaches that we've ever been able to watch for, quite a long bit of his coaching tenure. But it's definitely going to be interesting seeing that change at UNC. That's a face that we all got familiar with over there, and just all the people over at UNC as far as the fans as well. So I am very curious to see how they look going forward. They're always going to do very well recruiting-wise. Could have a little bit of an impact, but overall, it's going to stay relatively the same. It's a big school, there's a lot of history, a lot of talented recruits are going to want to keep playing there. So I'm curious to see how they look in the next coming years.
Pat, do you have anything you want to add?
No, not really.
Roy Williams, North Carolina alum, has left the Tar Heels twice. The first time he left was to get his first coaching job at Kansas. And you saw what he did at KU, took them to multiple Final Four appearances, and then left KU to go back to his alma mater. Now let's look at his entire career. 4th most wins as a coach in college basketball history with more than 900, 3 national championships, and quite the legacy. He spent 18 seasons at UNC, 485 and 163. One of the greatest coaches ever. And when he was asked in his press conference about why he's retiring, he said it was plain and simple, his health. And that's kind of worrisome, but at the same time, maybe it's time for him to retire, especially, Dom, after what you said from last year, with him not taking a lot of the blame for the struggles. But
isn't Bro old as dirt, though? Like, isn't he really old?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he probably just wants to retire. Dude,
Right,
it's
and-
stressful coaching college basketball.
And I don't think it's like for health reasons. I think it's to look out for his health so that he
Yeah.
doesn't you
Right.
know.
It's a preventative thing. You see coaches get like triple bypasses all the time.
he coached 48 years. What else could he do?
Hey,
Exactly.
he produced a lot of great memes as well. Let's not forget that. The internet is very in debt to Roy Williams.
But no, one of the greatest coaches ever and someone that the game's going to miss. But let's get into his replacement. Hubert Davis, longtime assistant coach of Roy Williams, is the new head coach. Dom, anything you want to add?
I think that North Carolina just wanted to add someone within the program, and that's exactly what they did. They wanted someone that knew the program. So, of course, Roy Williams knew the UNC program. That's why they brought him in. And that's what this move means. I don't know much about Brown, but it seems like a hire that they wanted. They got their guy.
Yeah, I mean, they made that decision rather quickly. So I think that they know why they did it. They like doing that. I mean, we see that with a lot of teams now. I think that's a common trend. You get a guy you're familiar with, who knows the ins and outs of the school, or I guess if we're going like NBA, of that team or organization. You go with someone who's familiar with that, makes it for a smooth transition, especially if you just want them for, a short amount of time, maybe a couple seasons, and then figure someone out long term. But I think that it makes sense. Again, like Dom said, I don't know too much about him because with all these assistant coaches, unless they had other previous head coaching jobs, I'm just typically not going to have that much knowledge on them. Their face isn't in the spotlight the way the head coaches are, and they aren't the face of the program the way that they are. So I don't know too much other than that. But congratulations to him, because I know that I think this is a move where keeping someone that you know internally, I think that it could definitely benefit them in the long term.
For me, this is a historic hire for the program. First Black coach in the history of the program, which is awesome. And
Because Roy Williams has been doing it for 100 years.
Pat, language.
And before that, Dean Smith was the coach there for a very
Yeah.
long time. So,
Yeah. They've had legendary coaches, but it's still really cool to have that. The main thing that I know about Davis, about him, is that he's been the assistant for 9 years with Roy Williams. He's an alma mater of the Tar Heels, and I just think that this is their guy that they really wanted. He knows the program really well. He's been a part of it. He's making history. I think that this is their guy that they wanted. Now let's move on to more coaching news. Texas gets their guy, and they steal Chris Beard from Texas Tech. Dom, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, this had to be their hire. If this wasn't their hire, it would have been devastating. But congrats to Texas for getting one of the best coaches in all of college basketball. I mean, I said what I wanted to say last episode, and I guess I should say it again. Chris Beard was able to get guys in their college that could have gone to any college they want to go to Lubbock to play for Texas Tech. Imagine how much easier it's going to be to do that, saying, hey, come to Austin, the capital of Texas, and not Lubbock, one of this is from what I've heard from sources, worst cities in America. And I don't know. I just wouldn't want to go spend some of the most entertaining years of my life playing college basketball in Lubbock. Now they can do it in Austin. He can use those recruiting tools, getting guys out of the transfer portal. That's where he's had a lot of success. And I think this is just a slam dunk hire for Texas because it's not based on one like fluky run at VCU of success. This was a multiple years of success. Took Texas Tech to the Elite Eight, took them to the championship, to overtime, and then this year their team wasn't as talented as teams had been in the past. They took Arkansas right to the brink, who took Baylor to the brink. They were Baylor's best competition this year. So this is a great hire.
Thank you. Parker, over to you.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's going to work out really well for Texas. They're going to be able to recruit. They have so many resources that few other schools are going to have. So I think that he's going to have everything that he needs going forward. Don mentions the kind of stuff that he was able to do for Texas Tech. Very different resources, very different kind of players as far as talent that he's coming in with. So I think that that's going to make a huge difference. That is a Texas Tech team that, like he mentioned, went to the championship game and ultimately lost to Virginia in a very close one. That was a 3-seeded Texas Tech team that was so talented. That team went so far, but a lot of it was his coaching as well to get him to the promised land, because you can have a ton of talent. I mean, look at that team. They beat the number 1 seed Gonzaga that year. You can have a ton of talent, but if you don't have the coaching to get deep, you don't have the experience, it's just a lot more difficult to do. So I think it's a testament to the kind of coach that he is. So it's a huge success for Texas. The timing worked out perfectly for him to move on from Shaka and take him in. So I think it's a great move.
This is a move that they had to make. 100%. They had to. They need to get a top-tier head coach, and this is what they got, a top 5 head coach in college basketball, really. And looking at it, the biggest part was the buyout. And the Big 12 school buyout dropped to $4 million. And once that happened, they made a quick agreement to get it done. So this is a great hire from Texas. But you also have to look at Beard, who earned his bachelor's degree from Texas and worked as a student assistant under their head coach then, which was, I believe, Tom Penders. So there's that history there. That's where he wanted to be, it looks like. And look what he's done. He led a team like Arkansas Little Rock to 30 wins in the NCAA tournament appearance with that first-round upset over Purdue. And then look what he's done with Texas Tech. Elite Eight, a national championship appearance. He's done incredible things over there in Lubbock, and his overall record ended at 112-55. There's nothing else that you could ask for from him. He did a terrific job with his time there, and I think he's really going to do a great job at Texas. Next up, let's look at the replacement for Texas Tech, and that is Mark Adams, their assistant. Do you guys know anything really about Mark Adams?
No, I mean, it's similar to the Brown hire. It's just a guy that's familiar with the program, familiar with what Texas Tech has been doing in the past, and they've been successful. So, when you get put in a tough spot like this, you don't want to break a working clock. You don't want to fix a working clock. So, another good hire, I would say.
Parker, you got anything?
Yeah, I will say one thing that I kind of want to mention with the other. It's a situation where, like exactly what we just mentioned with the Roy Williams situation. But, the way to look at it is this is an assistant coach, especially for Roy Williams' case where he was learning under such a good head coach for quite some time. And there's a lot of knowledge to be gained through that. To be able to pick the brains of guys like that goes a long way. So I think that if you are going to pick a candidate that's worthy, they have a lot of things to go with them. They might not have the resume as far as other head coaching experience, but they have the coaching experience and they've learned alongside those guys. They've seen what they do, the ins and outs of the programs with those guys. So I think that it's kind of like the relationship of a rookie quarterback and a veteran where they're able to learn a little bit more. Maybe you don't start them right away, but you get them ready so when they do, they're ready for the task at hand. So that was just a little comparison that I created in my head, but I do think that it makes a lot of sense, and it shouldn't come as a shock that they don't go for some big fish when there's not too many available. It makes more sense to go this route.
Yeah, the only thing I really know about Mark Adams is that very defensive-minded, and you've seen Texas Tech in the past. They've had great defensive teams, and I think that is going to continue with Mark Adams. That's all I really know about him. But the last coaching news that we have to look at is Porter Moser has left Loyola Chicago, and he's going to take over for Lon Kruger at Oklahoma. Are you guys shocked by this move at all?
No. Mm-mm.
No.
Not at all.
I mean, he's done everything that he could do at Loyola Chicago. Multiple good tournament runs. He's built that program into a program that I think people respect, and he's not using the opportunity to go take a really strong Power 5 job because the basketball history at Oklahoma is pretty rich. They're a pretty successful program, and in the past couple of years, ever since Oklahoma went to the Final Four, they haven't been able to get over that hump. They've just been a tournament team that's won a game, and that's not what Oklahoma wants to be. They want to be a team that can make those deep runs and maybe play in April. And we'll see. Moser did an incredible job at Loyola Chicago, and this is a great hire.
Yeah, he got them to the Final Four not that long ago when they lost to Michigan. That was a game where they were leading at half. That team was an 11 seed. They were the talk of the tournament, even when they ultimately didn't go on to win it because of what they were able to do. And that it's seasons like that that are a testament to his coaching, what he's able to do with a group of guys that are a smaller school, don't have the same resources as some of these Power 5 conferences, and to show that that team really embodied what March Madness is all about. Because as amazing as the UCLA story was, like, it's significantly different when there's a storied program with the resources UCLA has versus a Loyola Chicago as 11 seed. They both had very similar runs, but ultimately to see what he did for a significantly smaller school, it's really impressive. And then again, they went to the Sweet 16 this year. They upset Illinois. Very disappointing after such a big win to go out the way that they did. But Oregon State was really good this year, so that's not the point. But this was a team where he was able to consistently bring the most out of his players, very defensive-minded. Those teams would swarm the ball. I think that this is a great move. And when you're moving on from a coach like Kruger to then go on to him, that's a pretty seamless transition to get a guy like that. It makes all the sense in the world to me. It didn't come as a shock at all when I saw the news not that long ago when it did break. But I think that they're getting a really good one in him, and he's going to bring a lot to that program.
Looking at it, Moser has been one of the hottest mid-major coaches really since that 2018 Final Four run with Loyola Chicago. Since then, he's led them to at least, I think, a share of 2 Missouri Valley Conference regular season championships. Then this past season, they went 26-5, beating Georgia Tech and then the number 1 overall seed, Illinois, in the tournament before falling to Oregon State. But overall, what he has done at Loyola gives him and paves him to get a job like Oklahoma. That is a very rich history, like you said, Dom. It was only a matter of time until he moved on and went to a bigger program. And I think this is the right time, especially after Lon Kruger retired, going to one of the best basketball conferences and a very, very good program. But you have to remember, St. John's tried to get Porter Moser after Chris Mullin stepped down, but he returned to Loyola and he wanted a bigger job, and he gets it at OU. It was only a matter of time, and it seems like the right move to go with right now. All right, that'll do it with our NFL talk. Wow. NCAA talk. Now let's go on to the NFL. And the main thing is Sam Darnold. He has been traded to the Panthers for 6th-round pick this year, a 2nd-round pick next year, and a 4th-round pick next year. What do you guys think of this trade, and what does it do with the future of Teddy Bridgewater?
I love the trade. I mean, first and foremost, I know there are some teams that are engaged in trade talks for Darnold. I think that he has a lot of talent. And ultimately, any quarterback, and I mean any quarterback in the league, if you are over there playing for the New York Jets with Adam Gase and the limited wide receiving core, the bad O-line, you're not going to be very successful. So I think that this is great for him. I mean, is he going to go to a team that has an abundance of weapons or a great O-line? No, but he's going to go to a much bigger upgrade over there in Carolina. They're going to give him a lot more than New York ever could have. So I do think that it's a huge upgrade for him. I would love to see what he's capable of doing. He was a top 5 pick for a reason, and I really just want to see if they can continue to build, because they didn't give much up as far as draft capital. So the next 2 years, they can give him some resources, whether it's beefing up the O-line or whether it's giving him another receiving target, because this year, of course, like last year, is going to have a lot of really good ones, and they're going to have a high pick to go towards that. So I'm very curious. I think that Sam Darnold can shine over there in Carolina, exercise his 5th-year option. I think that the future can be very bright. As for Teddy Bridgewater, That's a huge hit. He's going to be bumped to the backup role. As far as what they do with him, I'm not sure. They gave him a good contract after the little thing that he was able to do in the absence of Drew Brees when he was with New Orleans. So his future.
Have they said that Teddy Bridgewater is going to be the backup to Sam Darnold?
I would assume so. I mean, I think Sam Darnold is a much more talented.
Well,
I don't know about that.
I think so.
Talent. There's no doubt Darnold's better.
Yeah.
Talent. He had nothing in New York.
Whether you want to say that Bridgewater is a better quarterback or not is completely up to you. What he's done is better than Darnold, but Darnold has significantly more talent, and I will hear nothing against that.
Sam Darnold's younger. I mean, he's just more athletic at this point. He has less injuries.
He's more athletic. He's got a stronger arm. Like Bridgewater's more accurate than him, and he's probably a little bit smarter.
I'd rather an accurate quarterback than a quarterback with a cannon.
Well, I mean, we saw what Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have done this year, or these past couple of years, and we see what those guys have done. Deshaun Watson's not the most accurate quarterback in the world.
But they're the best of both worlds when you have somebody like Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. They can sling the ball and put it right on target.
But
Sam Darnold is not a fair comparison in arm strength to them.
Yeah, no, they're not on that same aspect. But at the same time, those guys were not accurate in college. That's not what they were. They had to get developed into being accurate quarterbacks, which is what they have been. And to me, Teddy Bridgewater, he has a very low ceiling. And he's got a much higher floor than Sam Darnold. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. But the Panthers, like we saw, their offense, it was hard to go down the field. Everything was check down, and relying on great athletes to get open in space. And I believe Curtis Samuel left the Panthers in free agency this year. So that's even less of like more guys to like just try and break tackles off these short passes that Bridgewater can't make the deep passes down the field. And that's something Darnold can do.
Yeah.
I do not think that the Carolina Panthers are a big enough step up from let me make this clear. The Jets are by far the worst team in football. However, I do not think that the Panthers are a big enough step up to be changed by Sam Darnold, to all of a sudden be this potential playoff making franchise.
Well, not right away. I would not think that either. I just think that for Sam Darnold's career, it's huge for him because he was never going to do anything with the cast that he had in New York. And I think that if you're Carolina, they didn't give up too much, and you believe in bringing in competition in the QB room. Like, I'm a believer in that as well. But they don't make that move if they don't think he's going to win that job ultimately. They believe he's capable of going to do that. Otherwise, you just don't pull the trigger on a trade like that when you do think that you have a steady option with Teddy. Because ultimately, maybe you utilize the draft, you go a different route. But I don't think you give up those assets and try and bring in Darnold if you don't think he's going to do that.
But I think that something's got to be wrong with Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think they make this trade. I know that the Jets were shopping Darnold, and they got him for a 6th-round pick. Like, that's, if you can get a starting quarterback, granted one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL at that point, I mean, that's great. But at the same time, like 2 years ago, Sam Darnold was 2 years ago his rookie year, or was that 3 years ago?
He's entering his 4th year.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 years ago, I mean, the Jets had Robbie Anderson, right? They had Jamison Crowder, or maybe he was still on the football team. I don't know. But either way, I recall them having a decent offense in everything except for offensive line, which was absolutely atrocious.
That was most important for quarterback success.
Right. But he's going to the Panthers, who have a good offensive line, but it's not like a top 5 in the NFL.
Yeah, something to write home about, but it's definitely significantly better. Plus, he's working with a better play caller than Adam Gase.
This is better coaching staff.
Yeah, no, Matt Rule is a good coach.
And offensive coordinator Joe Brady's really good too.
Yeah, they've got a great coaching staff, but that offensive line, as of right now, lost a big piece in Russell Okung, who was their left tackle, who is a free agent still. Could they still go get him? Yes, but that offensive line could end up taking a big hit. But as for Sam Darnold, the talent is there. The talent and potential is way greater than Teddy Bridgewater. The issue with Teddy Bridgewater is the injury history for me. And last year, he didn't really show anything that he can push the ball downfield.
No.
Unlike Darnold, who coming out of college had mobility and he was able to push the ball downfield very well. I think him reunited with Robbie Anderson, getting another great wide receiver and more, getting a guy like Christian McCaffrey and a fine O-line, I think it's going to definitely help. But what you have to look at is the reason I think they made this trade is because of the 49ers trading up to the third pick. Because that hurt their chances of getting a quarterback, one of the top quarterbacks at 8. So I think they made that deal because the 49ers are in to probably get a quarterback to where they want to make sure they have an insurance policy in case they can't get a quarterback and someone that they can develop. But as for Teddy Bridgewater, it's either going to be a restructure or a trade. And I don't think any team is going to take on that contract. So whatever is going to happen, Teddy Bridgewater's probably got to restructure his contract, and who knows how that's going to go.
Yeah, because with Teddy Bridgewater, if they were particularly happy with what he was able to do last season, then again, they wouldn't make this trade even to bring in competition. Because if he's performing well, what's the point? You wouldn't gain anything out of that. You'd just be giving up draft capital that you could go towards helping Teddy. So ultimately, although he wasn't particularly bad, because that's the thing with Teddy, he's just right or wrong, average. He's not going to overwhelm you and be like, oh my God, he's performing amazing. He's also not going to be the reason why you're losing games necessarily. So I think that they just wanted to take a shot, bring in a talented quarterback, a top 5 pick for a reason, and see if just giving him just a little bit more is kind of the little push that he needed, because ultimately with a lot of these top quarterbacks, they come into really bad situations, and a huge thing with quarterback success in the league is the team and the scheme that you come in to play with, and that just never matched well with Darnold, unfortunately. So I'm excited.
Well, here's the thing. If Darnold is really not as bad as people say he is, and I think he is, I think he's doo-doo. But if Sam Darnold really isn't as bad as people say he is, then I would say this is his last chance. But I don't think this situation that he's being put into is better enough from the New York Jets for that to be the case. I feel like if you drop Sam Darnold into an offense like the Kansas City Chiefs, for example, then of course he's going to play better, right? I just don't think Sam Darnold is a good NFL quarterback. He's seeing ghosts out there, right? He has horrible decision-making skills. I don't know. I just think that I wish I could call this his last chance with a different team, but this team isn't good enough to be your last chance team.
Yeah, he's not coming into some immaculate situation where he's inheriting an incredible team, but I just think that anything over New York is a huge upgrade. And because the gap between a team like the Jets and the Panthers, especially in the direction the Panthers are going after hiring Rule and doing so well in the draft on the defensive side, I think it's an upgrade. It's not a huge upgrade, of course. That would just be a little bit much. That would be the wrong word choice. But I definitely think it's gonna better his career more than it's gonna hurt it.
Right. And the problem is that he hasn't been developed. Because you're right, Pat. So far in his NFL career, he has not looked good. No one's going to sit here and argue that. There are several flashy plays that he's made because we see the arm talent, we see the athleticism, where you're like, okay, if someone could take that and do something with it, he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. Now, is that situation of the Panthers the place to be? That is the big question, because I think, Pat, you can agree with me on that. You've seen some of the plays where you're like, okay, that is a situation where this is a quarterback, he has the skill, he has the talent to be good. And you're right, the Panthers, they're not the best spot, but they're a team on the rise, and they're a team that I could see him having kind of like a Baker Mayfield season this past year, where he was good. He was largely carried by the production from the rest of the team, but he was still good. That's all the Panthers are trying to get out of him, because I think that Teddy Bridgewater's ceiling is so low. I think this is a good trade. They ain't give up much. They're only locked into him for 2 years on his rookie deal at this point. And at that point, if they suck over the next 2 years, they can pivot and go elsewhere.
I agree. I think that this is the right move. I think it's a good move. And they have exercised his 5th-year option, which also leaves a few other things on the table as well. But let's move on with the NFL and just name some signings that we haven't covered that have gone down the past few weeks. Starting off with Kenny Golladay, signed a 4-year deal with the Giants. Adoree Jackson also signed a deal with the Giants after being released by the Titans. Parker, now let's go over to your team. Kyle Fuller teams up with his former defensive coordinator and goes to the Broncos. Philip Lindsay leaves the Broncos to go to the Texans. Justin Simmons signs a 4-year extension, and Kareem Jackson re-signs with Denver after they declined his option. Parker, what do you think of what the Broncos have done so far with their secondary?
Well, I think with a lot of off seasons, they have sneaky good free agencies. I think that they did something similar last year where they're not going to spend a lot of money right away on some of these big names. They're going to kind of wait. I think that's kind of just John Elway. That's just something that he does. He doesn't like to overpay players, and sometimes it bites him because I thought he should have paid Simmons right away instead of paying him now. He's now the highest paid safety, which I'm completely fine with because he plays like he's worth that money. But that's just typically historically something that he's done. And this is a similar situation. They were very patient, and it allowed them to get Kyle Fuller. It allowed them to bring back Kareem Jackson after they had originally cut him. They brought him back on a 1-year deal. So him and Fuller are also on 1-year deals. So the secondary for this season is set to be very good. After this following season, we don't know what we're going to see because Kareem's going to be 1 year older. Kyle Fuller, depending on how he plays, is kind of just a earn my next paycheck kind of contract for him. He's going to join the Vic Fangio, who's the mastermind with that Chicago Bears defense that he was a part of, where he was an all-pro. He's going to join that, look to maximize his potential earnings for the next contract. So that's what I expect out of this. I don't expect long-term deal to be done with Denver involving him, but these are good moves, though, ultimately, especially Justin Simmons. They had to lock him up. Philip Lindsay, going outside the secondary for Denver, is a guy signed with the Texans. That's a bummer. He was a great story as a Colorado kid who's been there his whole life, who was an undrafted free agent, who did a lot of historical things. But ultimately, we already paid Melvin Gordon, and you're not supposed to pay running backs as it is. So I'm not heartbroken over this one. They originally placed a tender on him. It was a late-round tender, and then ultimately parted ways with him. They allowed him the right to be an unrestricted free agent, which I think was very admirable. I think he earned that. So I wish him the best of luck over there in Houston, which is a garbage fire right now. Very interesting running back room right now with what they've got. That's the one bright spot, which ironically enough is the one position that means the least to be very good at. But I like the moves ultimately.
Continuing, Jerron Reed joins the Chiefs, and Sammy Watkins left the Chiefs to go to the Ravens. And I'm going to talk about that real quick. I'm pleased with the Jerron Reed signing. The Chiefs wanted to add to the defensive line, and that's what they did. They got a guy who's had 19 sacks over the past 3 seasons. And what you have to look at is with the signing of Reed, the Chiefs can now move Chris Jones to play a little bit more outside, opposite of Frank Clark on first and second down. They move him back to the inside on third down. So I really like the signing. Cheap signing for a very productive player. I'm very happy with that signing, and I love that they were able to beef up the defensive line. Sammy Watkins leaving, I'm okay with. Never was fully healthy, and when he was healthy, he had some good games. But the Chiefs just think it's best to move on from someone who just can't stay healthy. And I think as a Chiefs fan, you guys know how frustrated I was with Sammy Watkins because he was never really healthy. So that was really it for me, and hopefully he stays healthy in Baltimore. Next up, Deshaun Jackson signs a 1-year deal with the Rams. Dom, anything to say about it?
I think this is a great deal for the Rams, not paying him too much money. And of course, it's a 1-year deal, and 1-year deals are very often not like huge risks. And it's going to open up the offense. The thing with the Rams offense last year compared to every other year was that there wasn't really that downfield presence. So teams towards the end of the year were really loading up the front of the box. Fortunately, the Rams' run game was so dominant that it didn't really matter, but the offense just wasn't able to open up the field, and it wasn't able to just open up big plays. It had to be a drive per se, and those of course are tough because just one penalty or one loss of yardage per play all of a sudden totally derails your drive because you can't get that big play. And that's what Deshaun Jackson will bring to the Rams, that big play threat, that down the field threat. That Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, they aren't down the field threats. They're great wide receivers. What they do fantastic. They're route runners who get open, get 5 to 15 yards on their routes, and that's what they do. But the Brandon Cooks per se was missing from the offense last year. That's something that Deshaun Jackson can bring.
All right. Now, Pat, let's get into your team. Kyle Van Noy is back. Raekwon McMillan also joins the Patriots. And David Andrews re-signs with the Patriots. Pat, what do you think of the Patriots making more moves this offseason?
Well, let's talk about this real quick. We have spent the most guaranteed money in free agency. We have not had a show since we signed all of our free agents. So let me say this. Yeah, we haven't had a show since we signed Nelson Aguilar, have we?
No, I remember you going, the Patriots are back, baby.
Yeah, we had a show that day.
That did happen. Oh yeah, it was that day, right? So we made a lot of good signings since then. We have Hunter Henry now. We have Jonnu Smith. We have Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, and then these guys plus a lot of other good mid-level signings. I'm gonna say this, and I know I got excited that first show, but I am gonna say this: the AFC East is now going to be one of the hardest divisions in the NFL, if not the hardest. So
NFC West has something to say about that.
Right. He said one of. He said one of.
It's going to be a fun division to watch, but I am not going to promise the Patriots are winning the division. What I'm going to say right now is that if any single person says I'm crazy for saying they have a chance to win the division, then we have another problem, right? Because granted, Cam Newton is our quarterback. Yes. Fine. I'll acknowledge it. He wasn't the best last year. He could have a bounce back year now that he has some weapons, right? Nelson Aguilar had a great year last year. And I just think you're crazy if you say that the Patriots don't have a chance to win the division. Last year's team, we have 11 opt-outs? I mean, there is just no comparison you can make to last NFL season to this NFL season, right? Totally different season, almost a totally different team. Patriots are back. Our defense is going to be so good next year. So good. Stephon Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, Donta Hightower, Kyle Van Noy. We got Raekwon McMillan, right? And our O-line is going to be top 3 in the NFL. So that's my bold prediction is top 3 O-line in the NFL.
But you just lost a top-tier guard.
Yeah, and we got Trent Brown.
He's not a guard.
Yeah, but I'm saying our O-line, we lost pieces, but we got other pieces back.
Okay.
We have a fully developed O-line. I'm sorry, you got Joe Thuney. Yes, that's my bad.
Just want to make sure you understood that. So let's continue. Rattle through these real quick. Sheldon Jenkins to the Jets. Chris Carson back to the Seahawks. Juju Smith-Schuster went back to the Steelers. T.Y. Hilton back to Indy. And the Bengals add to the offensive line by adding Riley Rife, the offensive tackle, but release longtime veteran and Bengal Geno Atkins. That'll do it in the NFL. Let's move on to the NBA. Jrue Holiday signed a 4-year max extension with the Bucks. What do you guys think of this move?
I mean, I'm a fan of his game. I think he's a very good player, but he is most certainly not worth a max contract. There are very few guys in this league that are, and I get that some teams financially are in situations where they only have one star. So even though they're really not worth the money, they're going to get it either way because of salary cap and the way that the money is moved around throughout the roster. But this isn't one of those situations. I don't like it. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have Chris Middleton, you have guys making a ton of money. Jrue Holiday, again, great player. He's averaging like 17 points and like 4 or 5 assists, I believe. And he's great defensively. That's one of his biggest attributes throughout his career, is that he's one of the better on-ball defenders as far as guard play goes. But that just doesn't earn you that kind of money. Like, it really doesn't. I think he deserves a ton of it, just not that much. Max contract, when I saw that as a 4-year 160, I was shocked, to say the least, because I knew that they wanted to keep him long term. It was a great move to get him, and I think that he should 100% be a part of the future because Milwaukee's formula wasn't working before they got him, and I still don't think it will based on the super teams we're seeing built over there in Brooklyn and teams like Miami. But ultimately, I'm not a fan of the kind of money that he got. It's just going to create a lot of cap situations for them that they're not going to like. They're going to have to go with luxury tax. They even want a chance to compete, and the Eastern Conference is looking extremely difficult with the Nets being the heavy favorites. So those are my thoughts. But again, good player, just not worth that kind of money.
Pat?
Yeah, it feels weird to see Drew Holiday staying with them on a max extension. It's a long time for Drew Holiday. I don't know. He kind of always strikes me as like one of those good mid-level players that's going to bounce around the league, and yet he always somehow ends up with the same team 2 years in a row. But it's a good signing. It's just like I said, it's a little like Parker said, it's a little too much money. Drew Holiday's a great player. I mean, I think he's one of those people where like this is obviously a stupid assessment, but like I see his rating in 2K and I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, yeah, that's right. 86 overall, yeah. No, he's a good player. I wouldn't say anything better than like mid-level at his very best, an all-star reserve, like his very, very best. But decent signing, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's a great signing. I think it was a great move to add him, but I think they might have given him a little bit too much money. We have to look at he's setting multiple career highs this year, though, including steals, 3-point percentage, and percentage on 2-point field goals as well. So he's shooting better, and he's playing great defense as he always does. And I think that's great for Milwaukee. They wanted to add to the defensive side of the ball, and they did that by getting Drew Holiday, who is one of the best defensive guards in the NBA. So I think it's a great move to lock him up, maybe a little bit too much, but overall, I think it was a good move. Now let's get into the trade deadline. That was a couple weeks ago, but let's get into it. Starting off, Oladipo was traded from the Rockets to the Heat. Anybody have anything to say about the Heat new trio?
I like that move a lot. I mean, I think that the original asking price from Houston was ridiculous because I know that the Warriors were one of the teams that were interested, but they were saying they had to give up multiple first-round picks and an abundance of other assets, and that was not the case because there was a lot of rumors that if Miami was going to acquire him from their perspective, they were going to have to give up Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, and a little bit after that. That wasn't the case. They kept both of those guys, which is huge for them. Those are two great shooters, two good players among the many role players in Miami, so that was big. I think Miami is a team that with Oladipo can potentially make a series with Brooklyn competitive. I still expect the Nets to come out of the East. They look too good right now, which doesn't come as a surprise. But I think of all the teams, they make the most sense to give them a run for their money in a series. I love the move. They didn't give up that much. Oladipo is a talented player, and he's looked pretty good off of that knee injury. I have to say, I feel like he deserves a lot of credit for that. So I think that Miami did a good job getting him, and for not too much. So I think all around it was a good deal for them to make, and it was one that they needed to, especially now after getting LaMarcus Aldridge.
Props to them for getting Victor Oladipo, and props to Victor Oladipo for, like you said, coming back from that knee injury and playing pretty well. The thing with the Eastern Conference is it's a bunch of like mid-level all-star good teams, but there's no super team, which is why the Nets are so crazy to have in the East. The East doesn't get teams like this. The last team that was like this, I'd say, was the Miami Heat back when LeBron, D-Wade, and Chris Bosh were on them. You simply just don't see this in the East. It doesn't happen. Even when LeBron was a Cav, it was LeBron carrying the Cavaliers. That was not a super team. The closest thing that I think the East has had to it is the Celtics, and that's just because we had Kyrie, Hayward, and Horford. Granted, that never came to fruition the way it was supposed to. You don't see that in the East. So now the Heat are this other mid-level team that has these mid-level, like, former all-stars and or current all-stars, but like not that much of all-stars, like could definitely be scrapped from the game and you'd never realize they were gone type all-stars. And they're all going to try to compete with Brooklyn. I personally think, you said the Nets look too good right now. I personally think that they are peaking at the wrong time. I think that they will get burnt out. They don't have the depth. Those starters are going to get tired. They are not LeBron James. They cannot play 48 minutes in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But I think any team, and right now with the Celtics in the 8 seed, I think that that's going to be a tough matchup for any team that has to play them in the playoffs. Granted, I don't have too much faith in my Celtics right now. I definitely think that they have the ability to turn it around and give a team a run for their money in the playoffs.
What I have to look at with the Oladipo trade is it's a great move for the Heat. Great move to add to the young and talented team that they have. I think that they have not had the best season, but they are trying to revamp that team and get them to the point where they can get a big name player. And they got that in Oladipo, who's played well coming off of a severe knee injury. Credit to the Heat, credit to Oladipo, like both you said. But what I have to look at is the Rockets. They have nothing to show for trading James Harden. They have nothing to show. And it just shows how poorly managed that front office is, that they got nothing to show for one of the greatest players, one of the greatest scorers that we have seen in our lifetimes, and one of the best players in the league right now. Now let's move on to some other trades. Norman Powell to the Blazers for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood. The Magic trade two big pieces away by trading Nikola Vucevic to the Bulls and Aaron Gordon to the Nuggets. What do you guys think of this move? Of these moves, I should say. Parker, Pat, anything?
Yeah.
Nothing? Okay.
I mean, I had Gordon to the Nuggets is interesting because that adds more athleticism. That adds more athleticism to their team, and he's also a pretty solid defender. So I thought that was a very interesting move.
I mean, I'll jump in alongside that. As far as other moves, Vucevic to the Bulls isn't that exciting because the Bulls ultimately aren't going to do anything in the Eastern Conference as far as the playoffs go. So that move, as good as he is, because he's extremely talented, one of the most underrated players in the league, while that would be a great move for a different contending team that needed a big, the Bulls are not the kind of, matching partner with him that makes me go, oh, what a move. This is definitely going to help them get past this round or that round. It's not. But as far as the Aaron Gordon one that was mentioned, I do like that as well. I think that Aaron Gordon's a good player because I feel like him and Zach LaVine at the beginning of their careers were just known for being those dunk contest participants. And Zach LaVine especially has become so much more than that as one of the better guards in the league. And as far as Aaron Gordon, he's a very good power forward. He's had a good season before that ankle injury that took him out for about 6 weeks. I like this move because the Nuggets are a team that, Pal's mentioning having like a lot of mid-level players, with the exception to Jokic, based on the way that Jamal Murray's played and based on the way the other guys like Michael Porter Jr.'s played, they kind of meet that criteria, I guess, where it's like, okay, you got solid player, and then Jokic, who's like amazing. But like for the most part, if you look at their roster, it's a lot of good depth of good players, but it's not like having stars like with the Lakers with LeBron and AD, or the Nets with Kyrie, KD, and James Harden. But there's a lot to like over there in Denver. So I do think that bringing in Gordon definitely helps. That's a move that caught my attention.
Yeah, for me, looking at mainly the Gordon trade, what the Nuggets have been missing is Jeremy Grant. Since he left to sign with the Pistons, got a 3-year deal there. And what I have to look at is that Gordon fills that role pretty well. Plays solid defense. He's a good scorer, very athletic, great rebounder. I like that deal a lot. And it just gives the Nuggets more firepower that they had been missing throughout the season. And look at the Vucevic trade. The Bulls did the right thing by finally getting rid of Wendell Carter. Had shown nothing. I thought he was overrated coming out of college and has not proven to be anything at all. So I think that was a great trade to add Vucevic and to even get rid of Wendell Carter. Now let's finish this off. JJ Redick to the Mavs. Daniel Tice traded from the Celtics to the Bulls.
Praise the heavens above. Hate that guy.
So
I can say that now that he's gone.
Can I tell you you're mad about the trade?
Huh?
Can I guess you're mad about that trade?
No, I'm so happy about that trade. I'm so happy. You know what? I prayed to the Catholic gods, to the Jewish gods, to whoever they may be. I don't even know.
To the Hindu gods.
To the Hindu gods, that we do something with Daniel Tice. Because my God, listen, I have no issue with Daniel Tice. He gave us some productive time in Boston, but he's also after every call, it's bro, you just push somebody onto the floor like that was a foul. You can't do that. I'm glad he's taking his whining somewhere else. It's painful to watch. He's not a good center. It also is going to give Robert Williams. It's also been giving Robert Williams more minutes.
Who?
The Time Lord. It's also been giving the Time Lord more minutes. And it's also giving Taco Fall more minutes. So I have zero complaints about this trade.
That's what I like to see.
Yeah, no, from my experience watching Daniel Tice alongside Pat, it was certainly a frustrating experience. He was also a king of goaltending, was another thing that he did a lot. And it hurt me watching Pat hurt watching Daniel Tice play
I don't know
basketball.
if you guys remember this, but there was a playoff game last year that we lost to the Heat by 2 points because Daniel Tice put it back in his own basket.
I do remember that. That was
I remember that.
Was that the game where I may have had a Lore Foco?
Yeah. He is so bad at getting rebounds.
Was that the same game that Bam had that massive block on Jason Tatum? Or was that different?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was.
It was the same.
'Cause I remember, like obviously that was the lasting play that everybody remembers, but I forgot about the fact that he did do that. Oh my god.
He did it like twice that game. I think he accounted for 4 points for the Miami Heat that game.
Yeah, I forgot. Wow, isn't that something?
Pat, congrats. I'm glad you're happy that Daniel Tice is out of Boston.
And hey, we're back in the playoffs because of it.
Okay, let's finish this out. Rondo to the Clippers for Lou Williams. Fournier to the Celtics, Pat. Anything you want to say about that one?
Yeah, it's panned out a little bit, I guess. I don't know. It's a fine trade.
JaVale McGee to Denver as well. DeLon Wright to the Kings. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is buyouts. Marcus Aldridge was bought out by the Spurs and signed with the Nets. Then Andre Drummond was bought out by the Cavs and he signed with the Lakers. You guys have anything you want to add about either of those besides Dom saying Lakers info?
Lakers info.
Real quick before you go, Parker, I'm gonna just put it out there. I am so sick of NBA teams winning championships like this. It is so much more fun in a sport when your superstars are spread over all 30 teams or all X amount of teams, right? I mean, creating a super team like this, it's the cheapest way to win something. Sorry, Parker.
I wouldn't say cheapest.
Well, yeah, no, it is the most expensive way to win something.
That's fine.
I mean, if your team has the money, but like the year, and it's not like when you get like the Warriors, when you have KD, Steph, Clay, like Steph and Clay started there. That's fine, right? KD joined there. He's a little puss boy, but it's fine. Okay, I can say that. That's
No.
No, you can't.
okay.
You
Fine.
can't.
58-minute mark. Get over it.
Oh my God.
Listen. But like when you see somebody like Boogie Cousins join the Warriors on a $6 million contract, that's weak. That's weak. Go somewhere else. Make another team good, you bum. So I feel the same exact way about LaMarcus Aldridge. He gets bought out by the Spurs, and he goes immediately to the Brooklyn Nets. You loser. You absolute loser.
I
I'm
will
sick
say
of
one thing with
the NBA.
he was post Achilles, like, but he was on his last leg. He didn't really have much to give. But I do agree though, like with star
The
players,
Celtics were offering him $25 million, and he took $6 million from Golden State to win a freaking ring.
been a fleece by Boogie had he signed that contract. That would have been an absolute fleece because his level of play definitely did not warrant that
Oh
kind
my
of money.
gosh.
But hey, honestly, for your guys' sake, it's a good thing that he did sign with the Warriors because that would have sucked having to pay him that kind of money. But I get what you're saying, though. Yeah, LaMarcus Aldridge, he's definitely past his prime. Just 2 seasons ago, he was putting up some good numbers. This season, he's only averaging 13 points. He's not gonna, be overwhelmingly good, but he's gonna be a guy that, if you want to put him in the starting 5, depending on the matchup, you can, and he's gonna contribute offensively. If you want to put him off, coming off the bench, even better if that's how they look at it. Because I know no matter what, the big 3 and then Joe Harris are gonna be starting, and then with guys like him, guys like Blake, whether or not they want to take him off the bench is up to them. But I do see where you're coming from with this. The Nets, they're just that is a thing. I think buyouts in the NBA have become a problem because typically when they're done, it's the teams that have a lot of chances to win already, and then they go and take in these guys for minimum contracts just so they can boost their rosters before the playoffs. So I do know that is an underlying issue that a lot of people have acknowledged. But that's just unfortunately the way the NBA is gone. And I do like that you were willing to mention the fact that the Warriors are a different situation originally with KD because, again, they drafted like
They
that.
were. The only snake there is KD because they drafted Steph, they drafted Clay.
Yeah.
And Draymond.
And
Yeah.
Draymond. Yes. The
Yeah.
Warriors did an incredible job drafting. Same thing that the Celtics did. I mean, they have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown that they drafted. They're a good team out of the draft. But
Thank you for being one of the.
And then you give Kemba Walker a ton of money and trade for Kyrie.
Shut up. Who's in Kansas City? Who's your NBA team? Huh?
We
Oh,
had
wait.
the picks and then they
You have to
left,
root for
okay?
Sad KU. You have to root for Sad KU because you don't have an NBA team.
It's pure comedy right here.
Trust me, I've been campaigning to get an NBA team to Kansas City for years, okay?
Oh,
I don't
good
know why they-
freaking luck, dude. Which
I
one?
feel like-
Kansas City, Missouri? Yeah, that would make more sense.
All right. Anyways,
Oh.
I think an NBA team in San Diego is a little more likely with the new arena they're building.
Kansas City already has an arena.
Well, they're building a better arena and a better city.
Kansas City already has an arena. And they're
Kansas
on the
City's
short
arena
list
looks
for
like
an
the
NBA
course
team.
down at Hudson Park down the street.
Watch it, Pat. All right. I'm going to talk about Drummond because Pat clearly talked about LaMarcus Aldridge. I like the Drummond acquisition for the Lakers. I think that it helps them because the Marcus Gasol signing has not panned out well, and it gets them another rebounder, another defensive guy, so I like that deal. Now, that's going to end this episode, and that's going to end Pat probably on this show for a few weeks. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. Have a great rest of your week. We will be back next week.